I'm Marion O'Dwyer and I'm an actor.
Hi Marion, thanks a million for joining us on the Access Chats on this day. I always say if people find these on YouTube in years to come, they'll be kind of wondering what the hell are we doing talking about pandemics, but we're kind of hopefully coming out of a coronavirus pandemic, and it's July, but it doesn't look like July at all. So, you know,
October type July, yeah.
July. Marion, let me ask you, when you were a young girl kind of growing up, was acting something that you wanted to do? Was it kind of in your heart forever? How did it all happen for you?
Well, like my dad was a radio actor in RTE, and he then went into producing. So he was a producer when I was born, and I literally got like one line in a radio play when I was about, I don't know, was I 11 or something? I can't remember what age I was. I was very young anyway. And it was all very exotic and all of that, but I didn't connect it with, you know, a career path. And then I was a big fan of Maureen Potter, and she used to do television specials every year as well. At some stage she did. I mean, obviously I went to the Panto as well. And when she did the television special, there were kids in the special, and I, of course, immediately went, why am I not there, you know, to the parents, little madam that I was. And they fobbed me off. They were very clever about it. They said, oh, they go to drama school. So when I said I wanted to go to drama school, they said, well, that's in England. So, oh, okay. I mean, I was fobbed off quite easily. And then I think I must have been looking like I was going to be a very, I don't know, introverted person or something. But when I was about 14, they saw an ad for the Gate Theatre. We're doing classes. And so they suggested I went to them. I think it was more to do with like, how is she going to do interviews and oral exams for her intercert or her leaving cert, whatever. So anyway, I went to those classes, and late great Christopher Casson was the teacher, and another actor, David Byrne, who was another wonderful teacher. And like, they were classes that people were doing instead of cookery class or you know, some sort of evening class. So there was quite a mix of people. Some absolute yo-yos that shouldn't have been doing it, you know. And then people who were really interested. And Christopher was really patient. But the big magic of that was we learned on stage. So the classes were on stage, on the Gate stage. And of course, I fell in love with all this exotic sort of thing of backstage. And, you know, I just thought it was amazing. So I got a walk on in a play when I was doing my leaving cert at the time. And I can remember the moment really vividly. But like at that stage, I thought I'd do primary school teaching like most of my cousins had done. And mainly because the holidays were long was my thinking on that one. And I remember somebody coming in all excited that they were going to do The Merchant of Venice next. And there was going to be a crowd scene in that as well. And we might get a part in that, you know, a walk on or something. And I suddenly went, oh, I could do this maybe, you know. So that was the end of me then.
Wow.
That was the moment I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to follow this one. So.
And before that, like, were you a big reader? Were you kind of like, did you go to the theatre a lot? Was it kind of?
I went to very little theatre. Like, Mum brought me to something in the Gate. And I always tell Leslie Lawler, she's the reason I wanted to become an actress, because she swept on in this cloak in a play called The Doctor's Dilemma. And I just thought, oh, I want to be like her. And the irony is I never get those kind of parts, of course. But yeah, there's a few moments you can remember that, you know, started you off on your addiction, you know. But we weren't really a theatre family. Dad he acted twice on stage in his life, like once as a Sunday night performance in the Gate Theatre, and then once in the Gaiety. Yeah. With the orchestra reading poetry. So theatre wasn't in his bones. So my mum's father had done amateur acting in Thurles, but so that was it, like, you know.
And career, was it a sense of, I mean, you mentioned the kind of, you know, the magic in it, like, was it the whole, it sounds like it was the whole package. It wasn't just the performing, it was being in the theatre as well, that kind of world.
Yeah, it just seemed really exotic and interesting. And I mean, like, I remember that in the radio studio, like the microphone was all just very interesting and exotic. Yeah.
And can you remember what it felt like to be on that stage for the first time, you know, to be kind of in that crowd scene? Was that kind of something, when you mentioned, you know, about that kind of awakening piece, like, is that something that, is that feeling still with you? Do you know what I mean? Is that kind of, when you're, you know, when you're on stage, does that feel?
Well, sometimes you kind of go, I can't believe I got here. And I know that sounds very Pollyanna, but I do. Like, and then, of course, there's nights when you're thinking, I don't want to go on, and not humor. I think it was hard getting started. So just, you know, kick yourself, you know, and get on. But I love the fact that I can vividly remember certain things. Like, I remember going to classes, and as I say, you'd go into the auditorium and then get up on the stage. And I remember seeing an actress going into this, you know, that circular area in the Gate Theatre. There's a sort of hidden door there that leads backstage. And I remember this actress, and she had a fabulous hat on her, and she was going into this secret door. And I was kind of going, God, imagine going in there. I mean, such a ninny way of approaching it, but it was magic, and it still is sometimes, you know.
Well, I think that's, I mean, the more and more people that I speak to from backstage, front stage, side stage, whatever, but it is that magic, it's that sense of, running away with the circus, or, you know, that kind of making up new world, or dressing up, and kind of, And so
you connect with your childhood in a way.
Yeah.
The time.
But as you rightly say, there are those other days where you're kind of going, oh, you know.
yeah.
It's a balance.
It is a balance. But like any job, I mean, I worked in the bank when I left school, so I know what it's like to do a job that I really don't like.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. So talk to me about that, when you kind of left school then, and, you know, there was a primary school, teaching was kind of potentially there, and the acting was kind of took over. How did that kind of go down?
Well, I just thought, well, what's the quickest thing I can do? Had I got the points, I would have loved to go to Trinity, but I didn't get the points because I didn't do a tap in school. I mean, I was lucky to escape. I mean, I remember, you know, I did my Leaving Cert quite young. I was 16, but I remember it suddenly dawned on me, if I don't pass this thing, I'm going to have to go back. I thought, oh, why didn't I work? You know? But I thought, what's the quickest thing I can do? Because the parents were like, you've got to have a second string to your bow. It's too precarious. So I thought, what's the quickest thing? And secretarial course was the quickest thing. So I did that, a 6-month course. And out of that, I got a job in the Bank of Ireland. And I worked there for a couple of years, and I did pub theatre at night.
Okay. And
so that's the way I did that.
Where go to school? What school were you in?
Katrina.
Really?
Yeah, and actually that was another thing I remember. You know the way they say, if you can see it, you can be it, and all that crack. We were watching some dramatization of some book that was on our course. I can't even remember. But as I say, I didn't do a tap. But the teacher said, that actress there, she went to Skull Katrina. And I thought, oh my God, and she's on the television. I don't know why I had this thing about the television. But it was that thing of, oh, it's possible to be somebody like me and do this thing, you know. So I think, you know, that's important for kids.
And come here, the pub theatre, where was that?
That was in it was in Holt, the first one. It was a lovely woman called Gladys Sheehan.
Oh, I know Gladys well. Yeah, I know Gladys. I'm from Bray originally, so
you do. Oh God. Well, she gave me my start. She gave me my first part. I couldn't believe my luck. And then we went to Beavers in Ballantyre, and it was a lovely little theatre there. It was a gorgeous little mini theatre, and that was a great training, like, you know, because you have the audience ordering their pints of Guinness and their packets of crisps while you're doing your big suicidal speech, you know, so you learned how to kind of go, oh, better be more interesting, you know. So it was good, you know, like kids theatre then.
Or be louder.
Huh?
Or be louder.
Be louder. Yeah, maybe. Well, louder was a big thing I had to conquer, actually. My voice was very low at the beginning.
Then, obviously, you know, you kind of, was there a stage then when things changed, or was it a gradual? Like, you know, when you were kind of doing a secretarial course in the bank and doing the pub theatre, was there moments in time you kind of went, oh, okay, this is starting to go down a different route and have to make choices?
Oh no, I always wanted to do something, you know, to be an actor, but it felt like the impossible dream, you know. But I got a job. The late Tom McGinty gave me a job in his clown company, so that was a full-time job. So I left the bank to do that. my mother was crying. I can remember still see her and crying her eyes out over the whole thing. But so did that for about 6 months.
Okay.
Until he got sick of me. And I'm trying to remember I think I did temping then when I came back. I did a lot of temp typing and did, you know, as many classes as I could. Yeah. And I can't remember now what happened then. But I got 3 lines in the play in the gate, and that was like my toe in the door. But there was a lot of despair before that. There was a few years of wilderness of thinking, am I ever going to? And my friends I went to classes in the Oscar Theatre School, as we used to call it, the Oscar School of Motoring. But they were very good classes. Kevin McHugh was the teacher, and Chloe Gibson was a brilliant teacher who taught us Shakespeare. And we did Shakespeare for the schools and things like that, you know, which I think now were kind of a crime against theatre for kids, because we were all in grey outfits in every single play with the same outfit, like no matter what you were doing, if you were doing Othello, if you were doing, I can't remember what other plays we did, but King Lear, but you know, that's a thing to do to children, because, you know, when it's done colourful and bright and interesting, then, you know, they're going to love it.
Yeah.
But I think we killed a few possible careers. But I mean, there was good actors in it, and Chloe was a good director, and she loved her Shakespeare. I did a lot of coaching with her. She did a lot of you know, one-on-one classes. So
yeah,
she's great.
And can we go back there? Just that Tom McGinty and clowning. I mean, that, geez, like what did that entail? Were you out on the street?
Yep. Begging, as my mother called it. But we were doing primary schools, so we tour around the country doing that. We were based in Galway, and we used to get in this little rickety van and go around the country, and it was a good experience, you know. And then, but we did our street theatre as well, which was kind of when funds were running low. We went out and in our clown costumes and that, and did stillnesses, you know, the way Tom used to do them. And that was really good, because like in terms of observing human nature, and you know, like it was mad. And the other thing I loved about it was the street was your space. It wasn't like the pedestrians or the shoppers, they were visitors, you know. It really felt like that was our space, you know. And such an unusual feeling. It was great. It was really interesting to do. I loved it.
Sort of from as you mentioned, kind of pub audiences that kind of might have other things on their mind, to pedestrians who definitely have other things on their mind. I mean, from a young actress kind of starting out there to really good concentration trainings.
Yeah, it was good.
And Marion, I mean, you look at your career kind of, you know, since those times, you've done some, you know, incredible work with incredible people in incredible places. And I said to you before we press record, we'd be here for the next week if we kind of went through kind of everything. But I suppose, I mean, obviously the Abbey and the Gate have been kind of a huge part of your life and career. And also, you know, you've kind of swung brilliantly between, you know, brand new writing and developing characters and, you know, classics. And I suppose with your first time, I mean, obviously having 2 or 3 lines and something, and the amazing to getting your foot in the door, but do you remember the kind of first few times you kind of went, oh, okay, this is starting to kind of motor a bit? I mean, after the years of kind of pulling your hair out, but then kind of, you know, was there a feeling that kind of things were starting to click for you?
I don't suppose you ever really feel you're in your groove, or you know what I mean, in the sense that you can never relax with work. You know, you're always trying to create it. But it's funny, somebody was talking about dancing at Lunacy recently, and I was remembering back to when I was doing a play in the Abbey when it was being cast, and I wish I could remember the name of the person who did this for me, because it was such a gorgeous thing to do. But they knew I was, oh God, the new Brian Friel play, I'd love to be in that, and apparently there's loads of women in it. And somebody from the office snuck me the script. And so I got to read it, like before some of the people who actually did the original production read it. Picked my part and lobbied hard and didn't get it, and was heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken. And it was just one of those things. And then when they had gone to, I think they'd gone to Broadway at this stage, and they did another production, and I got to be in it then, you know, not the part I'd picked, but it was gorgeous part, and I loved it. But I remember marveling, thinking, God, I can't believe I was that proactive that I, you know, got the script and everything, you know. So I think I was quite pushing all the time, you know. I hope not pushy, but definitely pushing. Well, I do remember Patrick going, "You're on the list," like, you know, when I was asking him, please, you know. But yeah, I mean, certainly when you're younger, you're a bit more proactive, and you have to be, I guess, as well. And you kind of create the opportunities for yourself a bit. But so yeah, your ear is always to the ground. I mean, it still is a bit, but much more so when you're younger, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that's a kind of muscle that you have to have. I mean, you can't. That's a muscle that's very hard to teach. You can kind of bring it out in someone, but I always thought, you know, always speaking to actors for many, many years in different kind of guises, and remember back in the day, being with myself, that kind of sense of, because it's such a personal industry, it's very hard to separate yourself from your gig. So it's kind of, you feel like if you're trying to sell yourself or push yourself, or, you know, that's very, very hard.
Yeah, and also like find out where you fit in. You know, it's so important. I mean, like obviously very early on, I knew I wasn't a young typical Juve kind of person, so I wasn't going to be playing. And actually, Chloe Gibson was a great teacher that way, in that she made sure I knew, you know, and she used to say, "Oh, you'll get lots of work when you're 50, darling," you know. So I was saying, that's a long time to wait. But I was lucky. I remember an actress saying to me, "I think you're going to do well," when I got my first 3 lines in the gate, because there aren't many character actors around your age group. So I was lucky, and I got a lot of sort of the funny maid type parts, and they were always great parts, you know, and there was plenty to do and plenty of fun to be had with them, you know. So I think I was lucky. A couple of people said the right things to me to steer me the right way, you know, and I think that's very important, because I've known actors who wanted to play the romantic lead, you know, or whatever, and there's just no way they fitted into that bracket, like, you know. I mean, though having said that, it's always good to break those expectations and do something different, and you know, put somebody unusual into those kind of roles. But you know, if you kind of have a good notion, and that's hard to have when you're young. You know, like it's very hard to be objective of what have you got to offer, really, and are you being cheeky thinking that, or you know, are you being overly down on yourself, you know? So you have to get the right balance, and you have to get lots of people that you trust to give you advice, I think, you know.
But it's also as well, because I think when you're young, I can still remember, you know, that kind of speed becomes a thing, because you have other friends who are kind of gone like ahead, and you're kind of going, oh, what?
Well, I had loads of friends that had made it onto the Gate stage and the Abbey stage, and I was still, you know, not getting anywhere. And like the whole thing of legit theatre was huge in my mind. And, you know, like I look at it now and it's so different now, but in those days, the turnover of plays was huge. And the casts were big, and there was a lot more opportunity for young actors. And this business, like I was horrified when I heard that, though it's necessary, the Lear has a module on how to create your own work, because it's kind of anathema to what an actor is in a one way, you know what I mean? Like that, you know, that to be, I mean, I've done it myself and I've enjoyed doing it, and it was a great challenge in that, but you know, it's going to limit stuff, I think, if it's all of us, you know, writing about our own perspective on stuff, instead of, you know, dealing with texts that are completely outside our actual life experience, and kind of being an actor and pretending, you know, and learning.
Well, I mean, I think that's indeed a very, very good point, and it's come up a lot in these conversations around, say, the shift in the industry in the last, say, 25 years. Because you're right, I mean, back in the like late 80s, early 90s, you know, certainly the bigger houses, the bigger production companies were doing plays of scale. Like, you know, there was 10, 15. It wouldn't be surprising to see 20 in the cast in the Abbey. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't, you know, it was
exactly,
and there was very little, like, in some ways, there was lots of production companies, but very few, like, you know, devising or actors developing work. And I think it's kind of flipped completely the other way. And some amazing work and some amazing people, but it's trying to find that happy medium where, like I always say about people coming out, you know, to facilitate workshops, some actors are brilliant at it, but some aren't. And it's kind of, that's okay. So it's not like, that's a difficult one, because you can teach people to be as multi-stringed as possible in a career that you need to be. But yeah, there's something being lost there in relation to being part of an ensemble in a completely different.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously there's gems that come through. I'm thinking of my friend Pat Kinavan and all that he has produced.
Yeah.
And you think, my God, he's like astonishing and he's world class. But, you know, what worries me is that because, you know, I mean, it's money, of course. Yeah. And I do think the appetite is there for the classics. But I worry, how are we going to do Oscar Wilde in years to come? And, you know, and even though Casey, like, the theatricality that's necessary for some of these big plays, you know, it can be lost, you know, and you're not talking about losing completely outdated stuff. You're talking about losing beautiful literature and
no, but you're absolutely right. And there's also kind of, you know, from both, say, direction, acting, and the whole different contexts of theatre, there's a skill set kind of making the stuff on big stages. Do you know what I mean? With big casts. It's a very, very different art form than creating something for 2 or 3 people. You know, there's
absolutely. And learning how the other person's rhythms are going to affect you and all of that. It's I mean, that's an art form in itself, you know, and you see people not, I don't know. That's one of my worries. That's a real old fogey thing to say. But anyway,
I don't think it is at all. I mean, it's funny you mentioned Pat, and Pat was kind of talking about, actually, he was on that Dancing at Lunacy, wasn't he? He was part of it.
He was, yeah. We danced together.
He's very fondly, in many ways, about that tour.
Oh God, it was a dangerous tour. Very dangerous. But we're all like cousins now, you know. We're all, any of us who soldiered under that flag. But yeah, very bonded.
But around that time as well, I mean, you know, there's obviously Lunacy, which kind of had such a seismic effect on Irish theatre and Irish theatre on a national. I mean, it's funny, I was like, Jack Charlton kind of died yesterday, and there's all these kind of Italian. But there was, between like the late 80s and the mid to early 90s, you know, trace from Riverdance back through, you know, Dancing at Lunacy to Italian. Like, there was a lot of stuff there, like, that was oozing out of Ireland, and was, you know, you could feel it in the theatre. There was a confidence that hadn't been.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You went, wasn't it very soon after you went to Broadway with
yeah, that was on the back of Lunacy, because I was in Sydney with Lunacy when I heard I was going to be doing Wonderful Tennessee. That was mind-boggling. And it was an interesting experience, because like, we did an Irish tour of Lunacy the year before, and then we went to Australia. And I mean, I remember being on stage in New York and thinking, you know, we played the Dean Crowe Hall in Athlone last year. I'm just as nervous as I was for Athlone as I am for New York. But there was obviously the added terror or pressure, I guess you'd call it, with the producers wandering around and biting their nails. And, you know, you knew there was big pressure on it. And Brian as well, and Noel Pearson, who was our producer. And, you know, I remember thinking, oh, this is the grown-ups now. This is kind of being a grown-up, you know. And to be able to just put that aside and just try and concentrate on doing the play was a challenge, all right. But it was a great experience, like, you know. And
that feeling of, you know, again, that backstage on Broadway, you know, that even sense, you're talking about going through magic doors in the gate, but that sense of kind of, you know, going backstage to the stage door in Broadway must have been something else.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, because the theatre, the way it was then, I don't know what it's like now, obviously, but, you know, the theatre was just rented out as a shell. They didn't have so much as a kettle. So there was no kind of feeling that, you know, like here, you know, there's staff in the Abbey, there's staff in the gate that you know, and they are part of the fabric of the whole place. So there was no sense of that. So that was strange, like, you know. So we were just in our little bubble, like, you know, of our cast and that, you know.
But I mean, over, you know, there was a growing association with the Abbey then, and obviously the Gate, you know, around that time as well. And also, you know, getting to work on, amazing shows. Do you know what I mean? You kind of look at mean, I remember it was a Strupping Opera with in the gate. That was amazing. I just loved that. That was just again, and it was different. It was kind of, it wasn't much what you would have expected, as well around those times. But there was a joy.
Especially in the case in those days, because you know the roughness of the set. I remember people were complaining that the set didn't look like it was finished. But yeah, that was a learning curve for me because of the singing aspect of it. Because I was petrified. Singing is something that I have a bit of a block about, and I tend to go deaf when I'm really nervous. So that didn't help knowing what note to come in on. Oh yeah, it was desperate. And when we were rehearsing it, I never knew when to come in, and I was kept pleading with the musical director, give me a thump, a nod, a wink, give me something so I know to start singing because I can't hear. And the gas thing was when we had the dreaded band rehearsal, when the band came in, Benny on the trumpet just went, love, love, because he had the 3 notes for me, and I was like, thanks be to God, you know. I got a bit of salvation from him, you know. But yeah, it was a great show to be in. Again, a huge cast, and you know, fabulous actors in the ensemble, and yeah, it was a good experience. And I got to fulfill one of my dreams, which is playing a Vanguard. So
there you go. I'm going to be jumping back and forth, so apologies for the non-linear piece, but I wreck your head now. I mean, Friel obviously has played a big part in your career, and O'Casey as well. But I mean, you play Molly Sweeney over in Bristol, kind of.
I did, yeah. I never told him about it because I felt, I don't know why. I think I felt he probably wouldn't cast me. He'd probably think this is atrocious casting. But so I kind of felt I was have to do it in secret and say nothing. But I regretted later in later years just to tell him I was thrilled to be doing it. I mean, it's just beautiful work, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was proud of that production. I thought it was a really good production of it. It was very pure, very simple, you know.
Yeah. And did that become a big thing for you? I mean, obviously you've traveled seamlessly between, say, you know, film, television, theatre, and also internationally. Was the kind of moving back, was that kind of an easy thing for you to do, Marion, kind of moving from different constituencies to do, like, say...
It was very important to me to kind of go somewhere else and get work somewhere else from strangers who didn't know me, because you know, I mean, I got to a point where I was brilliant. I was working with brilliant directors, you know, again and again, and I just thought I need to know that people who haven't seen other work I've done before cast me on my merits now, and not, you know, it's just important for me to feel this is just you know, that I can move elsewhere. And I had friends living in London, and I was toying with the idea of moving to London. And then 9/11 happened, so I did Molly Sweeney and I skedaddled back home then. But yeah, it was nice, and it still is nice, you know, to work with new directors and new writers and that, yeah.
I mean, I think as well, there's I mean, it's no accident that directors keep casting you either, because, you know, obviously you're very, very good at what you do. You know?
I try and behave.
No, stop it.
I bake buns.
Yes, I mean, that's the only reason people cast you.
Don't make it hard for them. Just think they'd say, oh, they'd love that cheesecake again.
Yeah, right. And then Bessie Burgess. I mean, that's one of my favourite characters in the whole canon of Irish literature. But that was a lovely production? Was that a great joy to do?
Well, I'm God, I don't want to insult people, but I didn't like the set and that. I was brokenhearted about the set, and I love Francis O'Connor and he does amazing work. But when I saw the set, I thought that's not the production I thought I was going to be in, and I was really like worried that the set was so big that it was going to dwarf the play, and dwarf the actors and therefore the play. But in actual fact, I suppose it was a pure enough set that you listened to the language, you know, and it was theatrical in the pure sense of it. But anyway, yeah, I loved playing Bessie. I just loved playing O'Casey. He's just wonderful, and I enjoyed that so much. But then when I went to the Barbican, I didn't do it, but I forget. I forget what it was I doing, but anyway, I couldn't go, so I didn't do it.
What is it about O'Casey, Marion in particular? What is it?
I guess he's our Shakespeare. You know, it's like the rhythm, the language, and the music of the language. It's just such fun to play. It's hard, like Oscar Wilde is hard. And, you know, when you do a bit of Oscar Wilde or O'Casey, you feel you've actually done some work when you've done a speech properly. You know, you know, the sense of, oh, it's just gorgeous. You know, his language is just divine to play with, you know. And I mean, I don't like the kind of notion of the, you know, the way some productions are going down a very documentary style with O'Casey. And I think that's not the way to go. And I always have been in my bonnet when they iron out the comedy, because I think that's what gives you the tragedy, you know. Like, he wrote them that way, and that's why they're such classics, you know, because they were very, very entertaining, very funny, made you love the characters, and then broke your heart.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, particularly with, that's what's great about Betsy. There's that kind of, you know, strange dynamic that she has with the other characters and also with the audience. You kind of, you know, you love to hate her and then hate to love her. You know what I mean? It's kind of, yeah. And also, I mean, you know, obviously O'Casey's won the class, but I mean, you mentioned Friel. I mean, but you're working on Friel's plays as they were emerging from him. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of, and that I can only imagine what that must be like as an actor, you know, knowing the quality of the man's
but
life.
It was such an honor, like, you know. But I always remember, I was a great woman for taxis in those days. Anyway, when I was nervous, more nervous I was, the more likely I was to get a taxi somewhere. But I went in a taxi to the first day of rehearsals for Wonderful Tennessee. And it was in the Gresham, because they were actually filming it, because they were making this documentary. And I was a bag of nerves in the taxi. Of course, I whispered on to the taxi man like how nervous I was and the hell I was facing into, and, you know, how I'm going to do this and all the expectations. And I'll never forget, I got out of the taxi and he was, you go in there, you're as good as any of them, you go in there. So he sent me off on a good note. So.
Yeah, he got you in there. But also, you know, the Friel, but then, you know, with the Gate, you know, there was kind of Wild, and there was a lot of work around there, but also, you know, further on in, there was like Cat and Hot Tin Roof in the Gate.
Yeah, I love Tennessee Williams. Yeah,
and what a great play to be in, and you know, and that kind of allow you, you know, it's kind of, in a way, it's not similar to O'Casey, but he has those kind of bigger rhythms in his work as well.
Yeah, and again, gorgeous use of language and gorgeous humanity. And we'd Owen Rowe, of course, was my big daddy when I was playing Big Mama. It was just heaven. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
And what do you feel? I mean, that sense, as you say, going back to that child who kind of is, you know, going, well, why can't I do that? And kind of, you know, why that feeling. What is that? Are there words that can describe what that feels like, Marion? Even now, like, you know, after having done it for so many years, like what, you know, when you hit it, when you kind of go, it could be in rehearsal room or it could be on the stage, or what, you know, that.
Yeah, you just sometimes go, this is what I was meant to be doing, and have no question in my mind about it, you know. And I can't explain it, like, you know, you just go, this is who I am, or this is what it's supposed to be, you know. It can be, as you say, in a rehearsal room or on the stage or on a set or whatever, you know, it doesn't matter which it is, you know.
Well, I think the fascinating thing is, from doing these interviews, is that no matter where in a career someone is, the same blind terror sometimes never goes. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
and it can get worse, but it gets better sometimes too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was a funny thing there. I was doing an audition just before, well, actually, just as our lockdown started. I had to do an audition for a play in London, and I knew they're not going to be doing this play. You know, it was a Marina Carr play in London. And I thought, you know, well, I'll just do the audition show willing, like, because I know it's not going to happen. So I spent my whole day doing this self-tape, and I thought, if my neighbours come and see me, like if they, if they were to look in the window and see me talking to my phone, like doing this audition. And of course, it was Marina Carr, so it was heaven, and I auditioned for 2 different parts. So I had a great old time being in Marina Carr land for the day, and I thought, God, I've had a gorgeous day, just being in Marina Carr land, and just acting. And I thought, does that mean I don't even need an audience or an actual, But it was just the heaven of working on great language and great character and drama,
Yeah.
Of course, I sent it on at 9:30 in the morning on the Monday, and 10 o'clock, we're not doing this. Yeah, I knew that, But I enjoyed doing it for its own sake, like in Monk's Mandala or something,
It could be, through all this, and we'll come back to theatre in a minute, but through all this, you've an extensive, CV and career in theatre and film, and the kind of, the balancing of that, I imagine, can sometimes be difficult, both from a timing point of view, but also from, have there been stories of you running from one set to another, kind of, going from a film set?
There was one awful time I remember doing a thing, oh God, it was desperate. I was doing Payback, actually, the play Maria McDermott and I wrote.
Yeah.
For the show in a bag thing, and we were doing it in Dundrum in Mill Theatre, and I was needed on set for tiny part. I haven't even seen the film, and I had to. It was, the nerves were desperate, like having to run because they only had the location for that morning or something, or that jeepers. It was desperate, and again, I was pouring out my woes to the taxi driver that was zooming through the traffic to get me there. And then, of course, I don't know, I haven't even seen the film. I don't know if I even got made it onto the cutting room floor, probably, But yeah, those kind of tortures. It does seem this game feels like it's a feast or a famine. It can be like that. But I was saying about this lockdown, it feels like just normal being out of work, except that everybody's out of work, But we'll see where it takes us, and hopefully theatre will always come back. I think people start to think theatre will die, but it's more than, it never did die, so it's not going to now,
But come here, talk to me about, that transition or that kind of moments, like your first gig, say, in screen or television, was that a whole new kind of, oh, what the hell is that, is that?
I was I'd one line to say, and I was nearly slapping my own face to try and get a grip, and I remember a lovely actress, Penny Downey is her name. She put her hands on my shoulders from behind just to calm the hell down, because I'd one line, I think it was about 5 words, and I said them upside down, inside out. I'd said them every which way except the right order. And in the end, I was dubbed. By the shame of it, my one measly line, I was dubbed. But I can remember sort of saying, you've played Broadway, do this, stop being such a ninny. But I was all the cables and the track and the cameras and the crew. It was overwhelming. And, because it was desperate. But I got past that, thank God, because I love doing film now and I love doing telly now.
Yeah.
But that first line, oh my mother God, desperate.
But you haven't just done film and telly, you've done a huge amount in kind of film. And I was kind of looking at, because obviously I know you hugely from your work on stage, having seen you brilliantly over many years. But I was looking at this going, my God, I'd forgotten that you were in things. Do you know what I mean? That's, Ballykiss Angel. Oh
yeah, that was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was lovely.
Yeah, and then again, that was another one of those that hit. It was a zeitgeist there, that it was the new Glen Rowe, or the new, do you know what I mean? It was kind of,
yeah.
And was that a joy to do?
It was a joy to do. And again, Owen Rowe is my husband in it. I was his wife, more to the point. And, it was just great. It had a rocky start though when I went first, because I went on my own. He had been a character couple of seasons before that, so they were bringing his character back with a family to take over the pub. And I remember I got my sides for first day on the set, and I thought, this script is not great. And I thought, and this is my first day. I can't come in saying, lads, your script, and it's my first day.
Yeah.
I think, so I thought, this is a bit awkward now, you know. So I came anyway in, and I was given a few questions, and I was waiting for like a team of people to come and check out that this was, but they'd obviously agreed it beforehand, so there was nobody, so it was all very relaxed. And then the director came to me and said, oh, welcome, and we're going to start. We're not going to do that scene as scheduled. We're going to do it this evening because we're going to rewrite it. And I thought, thank you, God. But he actually meant, we're going to rewrite it.
Oh.
Like me and Tina Kelleher and him. And that was weird. And we sort of trashed out a few ideas over lunch. And I remember saying, the rock I perished on, I said, well, you know, why doesn't she say, oh, I say something about the kids, why doesn't she say something like, oh, how many kids have you got? Because that's a really normal question people ask. And I can say, oh, you know, 2, but it feels like 3 because of the husband, you know, that's a character thing and a bit of information. So we did that, we shot that, that's grand. Continued on, I did an episode off, and then I was back in with Owen. And I know what it was. I said 3 kids because that's, you know, I'd tell a lie. Initially, I was supposed to have 3 kids, but they changed their minds. So I said I had 3 kids, and then they only gave me 2. And I was like, well, I said in episode 4 that I have 3 kids. And I remember I rang up the director, because what happened was I thought they'd cut that or something, you know. Then I got the episode on a videotape in those days to watch. And I was watching, I was going, I'm still saying I have 3 kids. So, and I in my head, I'm going, this is the BBC. This is important that we get this right. There's loads of fans of this program. Mother of God. So I ring up the director in a flitter, and I say, you know, I'm still saying I have 3 kids, and I've only got 2. And he went, who have you told? And I was like, people are going to see this. Like, what do you mean, who have you told? And I said, well, you're the first person I'm talking to. And he said, well, I think, no, I think they were thinking that maybe you've got a son that you put up for adoption. You know. And I thought, well, that all makes sense. But, you know, I think he was just thinking on the hoof. I don't know, maybe they had planned that. But anyway, it never came to fruition.
It's sort of the phantom child in Ballymun.
But you know, like, so the madness of it, because you think all these things of, you know, big serious committee meetings about things, you know?
And then they forget a child. Yeah. Obviously, as well, then many people would know you with your association with the character, you know, Mrs. Brown in, you know, with Brendan one side, but also then obviously in the film with with playing Marion in Agnes Brown, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that, you know, look, that was on recently enough, and I remember looking at it kind of going, God, the flavour of Moore Street that was caught in that was just extraordinary.
Yeah. So Brendan kept saying they had a Cayley band, and he said if there had been a Cayley band in real life, we'd have set fire to it. Well, he'd get rid of the Cayley band. Like, he was begging Angelica to lose the Cayley band, and she was going, no, the Cayley band stays. But I loved him saying we'd have set fire to it.
That's a great line. That's a great, you know, from the Hollywood annals, you know, the Cayley band stayed in the movie. But also, I mean, you've worked, as I say, with great people in both film and television. Obviously, you're in Love Hate, and you obviously worked with Neil Jordan on Ondine, and, you know, there was and is there, and obviously Moon Boy, the great Moon Boy, is there, I mean, obviously the process is different working in a live context, and it's different from an acting point of view. Is your, like, when you receive something, like, how does that differ? Not being on set now, but just for yourself when you receive scripts aside, kind of, you know, in a theatre and in a film, is there a different process in your head that you kind of go through? Yeah,
because like with telly work like that, you know, I mean, say for instance, Moon Boy, I literally worked for an afternoon on that. I had very little in it. So you kind of just make your own choices and hope that the director is pleased with them, you know, when you come on set. And there was a sort of a fashion there for a while. Well, it still is that you do self-tapes to get cast in telly film a lot. But there was a period when a lot of German TV got made here. And I remember doing a couple of jobs that I hadn't met the director yet, because I got the job from a self-tape. So I never actually even met the person. So the first time you meet them is on set. And that's quite strange, like to try and, you're working and you're trying to create a working relationship immediately. So that was a strange one, you know. And I remember doing this terrible film. I haven't seen the film. I don't know what it's like. But anyway, I haven't watched it. But I did this film, and it was a good few years after Agnes Brown. But the guy cast me because of Agnes Brown, you know. And I remember on set, he said something like, when I first started, he said, "I can't wait to get going with you now, and you know, we'll have fun." And I was kind of going, right, okay, grand. But I think he thought I was as witty as Brendan O'Carroll had written me in Agnes Brown, so that I would be contributing those kind of witticisms to his script. And I certainly wasn't, unfortunately. I wished I was, but I wasn't. So, you know, it was a funny one.
It's called acting, darling.
They like separate the writer from the actor, like, you know. I mean, I was given amazing lines to say, you know.
You mentioned Rita Carr earlier on, and
yeah.
I mean, but obviously you've kind of worked in Rita's work, you know, Selena's By the Bog of Cats, Abby and others. But like, what's about Marina's? Her language is just so like, as an actor to kind of to speak, because it's difficult as well. But as an actor to kind of speak those lines.
Well, the first time I worked with Marina was, it was the first time, I think, was Portia Coughlin, the first production of Portia Coughlin. And that was written phonetically. We got a script with it in the phonetics the first time. And that kind of was really handy for learning the accent. It was kind of hard to decipher, but once you got into it, you know. It was like watching an episode of The Wire. You got into the language and you got it. But again, the richness of working on her stuff, you know, and the way people talk, and that they're not afraid. I mean, you know, the joy of being thoroughly nasty sometimes, and you know, it's very satisfying stuff to work on, you know. And you know, it's all about relationships, of course, and they're so interesting because they're not conventional, you know.
Yeah. But that must have been, I mean, to be kind of, you know, as you said, you know, working with writers at the genesis of something. I mean, but even to be working with a script that's kind of in that shape, you know, in that kind of, that must be extraordinarily interesting to kind of, you know, to kind of be eking it out with and further writer, you know, to kind of to find those rhythms there.
Yeah. And there was, I mean, I'm a terrible giggler in rehearsals, you know, and I mean, I don't think it's important to be a loud giggle, because if you're not a loud giggle, how are you going to do it? You know, you need to have the crack. And it is also, I think that my excuses, I think that's part of the creative process. But you know, I was skipping my way through rehearsals at Portia Coughlin. We did this thing of, and such a tragic story. It's such a heavy play. And I do have a theory that the heavier the piece, the more actors kind of need to let fly with giddiness before you get going on it. But we did this, Gary had us do an improv, you know, the backstory of the play, you know. And I always remember Des Keogh was playing Cinchel and I was Maggie May, and we came as a couple into this funeral thing for Gabriel, Portia's twin. And we came out the tension. I mean, it was a really good exercise. It was, everybody else was acting very well, and came into this really tense. And Des just turned to me and said, "Will we go?" Like, because we'd just arrived, and just like a husband would, you know. And I, just like a wife might, went, "No, we will not. We only got here," you know. And the two of us collapsed in a heap. He sat at the side, I sat beside him, just sat and giggled, you know. But why am I saying this? I don't know how I got onto that. But
you were talking about giggling and kind of breaking tension with it. You know, that's something serious. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know why I was saying it, because when we did Portia Coughlin, the very first day of rehearsals, Gary cut a big speech of mine, and I was kind of going, "Oh gosh, no, that's a long big speech gone. Oh well, not to worry, you know." And not sure what harm, you know. It was a lot of exposition, a lot of plot in it, you know. we did our first preview on the Thursday, I think it was. And then on the Friday, says, we're putting that speech back in, we need it. And I hadn't a chance to rehearse the giggles out of it, you know, like, so I thought, oh, that's going to be scary, because in the scene with me is Brona Gallagher with an eye patch on her. And that's not easy to look at. So, I mean, it just isn't. So I thought, how can I cope with this? So I thought, I'll do that classic. I'll just look out into the middle distance. And I was dreadful. I'm sure people were going, what kind of an actor is she? But I just said it all out front because I couldn't look at Brona.
Deep breath, I'll get through it.
You know, when you've got to do it, you got to do it.
Come here, I won't keep it much longer. I'm interested in I mean, you mentioned Druid, but you've kind of done, obviously, work, you know, like formative work there with Portia Coughlin. But also, you know, you move on then to doing work like, you know, to Be Infants and Evil more recently, you know, and the kind of...
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, Portia Coughlin was in the Peacock.
The Peacock, sorry.
Gary
Sorry, yes.
I've done a few plays with Gary in Galway, all right. And I did, my first tour was with Gary, which was Lovers Meeting.
Yeah.
And I felt really strongly at the time, Gary was you know, I did the best work at the time, I thought, that I'd ever done, because she just, you know, thrashed it out so many different ways. And she was really stimulating to work with. It was really good. And I was really lucky, you know. And Be Infants and Evil, I mean, yeah, that was a new play. And I think it probably needed another draft. It needed more work on it. But a very talented writer, Brian Martin. But I had a great time. I was playing the granny. I was playing a blind granny, you know, with a rain hat on her. What more do you want in life, you know? And it was the best crack. It really was. And poor Marty Ray was there agonising, playing a paedophile and having a horrible time. And I was having a ball.
Can we talk to me about that? I mean, I suppose, you know, as an actor, I mean, we talk about writers a lot, but I mean, the relationship between yourself and the director, you know, I think that's, you know, and you've worked with the greats, but also you've worked with people that, you know, obviously you've worked with them quite a bit. You've worked with Jim Culligan quite a bit. You've worked with Ben Barnes, Patrick Mason, you know, on and on we go. But I suppose that having worked with people, you know, a lot, there's a kind of shorthand which can be good, but also, you know, there's a kind of a pressure, I suppose, in kind of, you know, digging deeper as you go.
Well, I actually, the opposite I would think, and that was maybe one of the reasons I was so keen to work with other directors and go to England and do stuff there. You know, when people know you really well, there's the expectation she'll do what you did.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do that to myself, because that's very comfortable and very easy trap to fall into. Like, you know, I mean, I probably still do it. I mean, probably people are looking at this going, well, it didn't work out in that one. But, you know, you have to try and stretch yourself, and you mightn't succeed, but at least try, you know.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, I'm very instinctive, so there is danger, like, that you're just going to do what's comfortable because of that. You know what I mean? But I mean, I do analyse. I sometimes blather on about it as if I never do analysis of characters and scenes, and that, you know, I love doing that. But then there comes a point I just want to, you know, feel my way through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, you know, and I think from chatting to you and from watching to you, there's a drive there. I mean, as there has to be with everybody, but you kind of said about that kind of not being afraid to put your foot forward in whatever kind of got, you know, when it's important to you, but also the sense of that it's work. Do you know what I mean? That it's kind of, no matter where you're doing it, you know, you mentioned showing the bag. I mean, that, you know, putting yourself into that frame, I think it was very scary, wasn't it? That, you know, after...
I was going to have a heart attack. I genuinely thought I was going to have a heart attack. I'll never forget it. Myself and Maria, we had to do 10 minutes for each other. All the show and the baggers came to watch each other for 10 minutes. I've no memory of what the other people did. And I mean, it was just the worst possible. And I remember the sweat popping off me. And I remember thinking, actually, my heart is going so fast, it mightn't last the scene. It mightn't last the 10 minutes. It was terrible. And it was that thing of, because we'd written it as well as performing it. So I think, is this absolute horse manure, or has it got any validity or anything. You know, we didn't know what we were, you know, and we nearly killed each other as well. I mean, the miracle is Maria McDermott and I are still friends after it, you know. But yeah, it was quite an experience. I'm really glad I did it. So I wouldn't be in a hurry to do it again.
I was going to say, are your theatre making days over?
Possibly. I don't think anybody's crying over that. But no, I mean, it was very satisfying. Like, you know, it was kind of mad to try writing something. And, you know, it was good fun. And I mean, I had Jim Cullen, I remember telling him about a line I'd written, which was very bold and nothing to do with the play. And his face falling, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to cut that, haven't I? And, you know, they had to kind of, you know, you can't have your little rant there. That's not anything to do with anything other than you having a rant. So things like that. But it was good fun.
Marion, the sense as well, you know, obviously of you know, playing parts that you've, or not parts, but being in plays that you've been in before, you know, again, is that kind of a very weird experience? You know,
it's a really interesting experience because very strange because I did Aunt Lizzie in Philadelphia, Here I Come twice. I did it in the Gaiety and I did it in Lyric. And Brian wasn't well enough to come to the Lyric, but he came to the Gaiety when we did it. And I don't know, like I was an Englishman directed the first one I was in, Dominic Drumgoole, and then it was Andrew Flynn who directed the second one I did. And, you know, even the visuals were totally different, you know, and like different wig, all those sort of things. It was very interesting, you know, and then, but I really enjoyed doing it both times. But that's the thing, I think when you're doing a different production of a play, you go into it as if you've never done it before, really, you know, because you're finding it in a different way with different people and a different director and that. So, and that's really interesting how that manifests, you know.
And again, you know, you mentioned it before, and I think, you know, I think Bessie Burgess is a great kind of example of it, or Sean O'Casey's work. I mean, particularly in kind of your work, being able to turn on the sixpence between that kind of tragic comedy space. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can, the naturalness of your comedy skills are kind of well written about and well drawn. But I think what they have a gateway to then is kind of the wealth of being able to kick people in the, you know, in the proverbial by kind of going, well, now, yes, you're well able to laugh at me a minute ago, but you know what I mean? But that's a huge and well-honed skill to have that you can wear so lightly in roles. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, because I think what's great about you is there's an immersion of you in there. It's not like, it's very hard to read signals off you unless you want us to read them.
Yeah, well, that's nice to know. I don't know.
You know, I think when you're going for the comedy, you can live in it and it's a joy to watch. But then it's the segue between that and kind of, oh Jesus, how do we get here, is kind of, yeah, it's hard. And I mean hard in a very good way for an audience, because you kind of expect one thing and then kind of you end up getting a completely other result.
Well, I love that myself when I'm watching theatre or film even, or telly, that, you know, I'm laughing and then suddenly I'm crying, and, you know, you want to get your emotions involved, like, you know, and sometimes comedy is the best way through that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, you think of recently Ger Lawless in The Unmanageable Sisters, kind of when we all knew probably what was happening to you and what was going to happen to you before you had a sense of it, which kind of made it all the worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that was gas crack to do. That was a mad show to do. I mean, with all those women, 15 of us, like, you know.
Yeah, and, I'll never forget the bingo rap as long as I live.
When I saw the bingo thing, I thought, I have to do that in honor of my mother. She loved her bingo. And I have to do that. And I was sorry she didn't live to see it. Like, she would have loved it, you know. So she wanted me to tell people she was doing bridge, not bingo.
Yeah. Notions of upperosity, yeah.
She wasn't normally like that, but that was one thing. So don't tell people I'm doing bingo. I'd say I'm going to bridge or something.
but come here, I mean, like even in your career, you flipped between, you know, those, you know, Miss Prism, you know, in the kind of the high, not the higher, but the high, you know, the higher echelons of society roles to the kind of down and dirty Tennessee Williams or, you know, Dublin roles. And again, there's very few people that can do that. There's very few people that can live naturally in both those places.
Of course, tourism now wasn't exactly high on the list, but
No,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And like, I remember playing a lady in An Ideal Husband in the Gate, and my mum, she was so relieved I wasn't the maid anymore. At long last, I had a frock, you know. And I had amazing costumes. I wish I could remember the name of the designer, actually. But anyway, I remember her talking to Michael Colgan that night, you know, and he's saying, oh, it's great to have her back. And, you know, it's a very small part, but we're delighted she took it. And Mum just going, yes, well, it is. As much as they should have rewritten Oscar Wilde to suit her. But she said, well, it is, but at least it's a lovely frock. And he did not know whether she was deadly serious. But I think he thought, am I being sent up here? What's this? You know, no, it's a nice frock. And I was a lady. But yeah, that was pressure. I remember kind of going, gosh, I'm exhausted. Because you're trying to look nice all the time and trying to have proper carriage and sit up straight. Oh, God, it was knackering. Yeah. And I thought, I'm used to slobbering around the stage, like, you know, with a blanket on me for a dress. So.
But you've done that quite a bit, and I think that restraint or the different style of acting, or a different style, not different style of acting, but different choices in acting. The kind of, you know, in the more wilder parts, you can kind of, you have that moment or moments where you let yourself go, but in those kind of costume dramas, it's all repressed.
Yeah, when they're less earthy, I find that harder to do. You know, we all have our things that are easier or whatever, I suppose, or more comfortable. Yeah. You know, and some people are more comfortable looking nice and, you know, all of that. But I mean, I'm always terrified I'm going to trip on my frock or do something, you know, to show myself, you know. So.
Listen, Marion, thanks so much for taking time out, and I hope the sun comes out. You can get back out to that lovely garden of yours.
With my plastic grass.
Listen, thanks a million for taking part, and look forward to seeing you again back on our stages when we can get back on our stages again, hopefully in the near future.
Thanks a million. All the best.
Bye.